This is every single fight to make after UFC Fight Night Vegas 27, Font versus Garbrandt, which was the card that just finished last night. It was an amazing card. I've got some of the key fighters from that card on the screen right now, both winners and losers, and I'm going to try and find their next opponent, who I have hidden around the perimeter of the screen, and will slowly reveal them as this video goes on. I'll show you what I mean by that. Starting with the main event's winner, Rob Font himself had an absolute clinic against Cody Garbrandt. Destroyed him start to finish. Some close rounds, don't get me wrong, but Rob Font was just a little bit too much. I know he called for a title shot. I know he mentioned names like Sandhagen versus Dillashaw, and obviously the title bout that has to be rematched between Aljamain Sterling and Piotr Jan. I feel like he's not going to get any of those names whatsoever. I think the name for Rob Font is probably going to be the winner of a bout that recently got signed between Jose Aldo and Pedro Munoz. And I think that Pedro Munoz is going to beat Jose Aldo, so I've got his picture here. I think that's definitely the next fight for Rob Font. If Pedro Munoz does beat Jose Aldo, either way, I don't mind who it is. It could be Aldo versus Rob Font in the main event of a fight night. That would be amazing as well. I just feel like Rob Font needs one more fight before we start talking about title fights. Plus, there's a massive logjam right now at the top of the bantamweight division, and we need to start getting these contenders towards the belt. And I feel like Rob Font is just outside of that pocket right now in the bantamweight division. Plus, Pedro Munoz, if he does beat Jose Aldo, has a first-round submission win over Rob Font, which is something that I'm sure Rob Font would love to get off of his record and get a win back for himself before he goes on to fight for the title. I think the winner of Jose Aldo versus Pedro Munoz should fight Rob Font next. If it's Aldo, amazing. That one's for a title elimination bout as well. And if it's Pedro Munoz, even better. I think Pedro Munoz is one of the most underrated guys in the division. Plus, he finished Cody Garbrandt in the first round. Let's not forget about that. I think the winner of Aldo versus Munoz should be next for Rob Font. Let's talk about the loser of the main events, Cody Garbrandt. I was looking through the bantamweight division, and no fights made sense. Garbrandt's going to need around, 5 months off? Maybe at least. I know he didn't get TKO'd, but he took a lot of damage. There's a lot of swelling. He might have a broken nose. Who knows? His lip was completely busted. He's going to need some time off. At least 5 months, I would assume. Which means that a lot of those matchups right now in the bantamweight division, I expect Marlon Moraes to be signing a fight within the next few weeks. I expect Dominic Cruz to be signing a fight very soon as well. Edgar to be signing a fight very soon as well. There's just a real problem in terms of just time schedules with these opponents for Cody Garbrandt in the bantamweight division, and he has mentioned moving down to the flyweight division. Originally, I thought Askar Askarov might be a good opponent, but I think we're going to have to see Askar Askarov get his title shot and have Cody Garbrandt take on the loser of Figueiredo versus Moreno in the flyweight division. I think that's going to be Brandon Moreno. That's next month. The loser of that one is also going to need a little bit of time off, maybe around 4 or 5 months themselves. That would match up perfectly with Cody Garbrandt's schedule. And also, if you have him versus a loser of the title fight, you're not having Cody Garbrandt hold up a guy who could be fighting for the belt in the flyweight division. Like, if I made Cody Garbrandt versus Askar Askarov, or a guy like Alejandro Pantoja coming off a win, who knows, but he just signed another fight, so that isn't even on the table. If I had Cody Garbrandt versus Askar Askarov, we'd have to wait even longer, and we just have the winner of Figueiredo Moreno sitting there with a belt, not knowing who to defend against, waiting for Garbrandt versus Askarov to happen. So, time-wise, Garbrandt's number 6 in the bantamweight division. He's not going to move down that much. I think he'll be around 6 or 7 by Tuesday when they update those rankings. That's still going to give him some kind of leeway, and his star power is going to give him some kind of opportunity to jump down to the flyweight division. I think he should take on the loser of Moreno versus Figueiredo. I think that'll be Moreno, in all honesty. But either way, I think it's just good to do, because we get the most out of Garbrandt. If he loses at flyweight, there's always that one last chance. Otherwise, he's cut in the bantamweight division. I just feel like right now there's no real names that make sense at bantamweight that match his time schedule. And I feel like he should take on the loser of the main event coming up soon next month on the pay-per-view. I think that's a good idea, because one, if the loser loses in Moreno, he's still a young guy, and you could try and make his name even bigger by having him fight a guy like Cody Garbrandt. I mean, Garbrandt's name value is 4 times the amount of any of these flyweights. So having him down there in that division, I'm all aboard. Maybe it'll be a new narrative to talk about. Maybe Garbrandt's even better in the flyweight division. Who knows? I think that's the next move for him. Moving on, down the card. To the co-main event, Carla Esparza destroyed Yan Xiaonan completely. I think her next opponent should be Rose Namajunas 100%. The storyline is there. She even called out Rose Namajunas. She has a win over Rose Namajunas. It makes all the sense in the world to make this fight next for the women's strawweight belt. I know Joanna Jędrzejczyk feels like she has some kind of right to the belt, but you're losing all the time, and you're not winning any fights against anyone good, in all honesty, and even your win over, I don't even know who it was, I think it was Tisha Torres, wasn't even that impressive in the strawweight division not too long ago. I believe it was at UFC Calgary. Either way, Carla Esparza's next for the belt 100%. She's probably going to move above Jędrzejczyk just because of Jędrzejczyk's inactivity. So she will be number 2 on Tuesday in the division. She's beaten Rose Namajunas before. She's also the only strawweight champion in UFC history that Rose Namajunas does not hold a win over, which is a very important thing. That would 100% make Rose Namajunas the greatest strawweight of all time. I think she probably is going to be considered that already now. But if she beats Carla Esparza, there's no argument, and she's just going to set the bar high for whoever wants to beat her next and try and get that strawweight GOAT title in the future. But Rose Namajunas, Carla Esparza, Namajunas has beaten Andrade, strawweight champion, Jędrzejczyk twice, strawweight champion, Weili Zhang, strawweight champion. The only one she hasn't beaten, Carla Esparza. Let's make it happen. I like the storyline, and let's make it real soon. Other than that, the loser of the co-main event, Yan Xiaonan, very, very bad loss. China wants to make sure there's going to be one of their representatives, I'm sure, so there's going to be some foreign money towards the UFC, I assume, to make Yan Xiaonan versus Weili Zhang. This will ensure that one of them from that market stays in the women's strawweight division. Yan Xiaonan's going to need a little bit of time off, probably around 4 months. I mean, it wasn't a devastating loss where she got KO'd out cold badly and she's going to have to recover from a concussion. She just kind of couldn't move and got beaten up. So she's going to need around 4 or 5 months off. Weili Zhang also got KO'd badly against Rose Namajunas. She's going to need a little bit of time off as well. Let's make them against each other. Maybe even in the main event of a Chinese event in the future. Maybe in China, who knows. Let's make that fight. Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan. I think it makes all the sense in the world. Moving on to the People's Co-Main event. I don't know why this was opening up the main card. Jack Hermansson took on Edmen Shahbazyan and had an amazing performance and won it as the fight went on. I think Jack Hermansson's next opponent should be, and you're going to like this, I've really conceived this and believed it, and I feel like I've achieved a great opponent for Jack Hermansson, and that opponent is Mr. Luke Rockhold himself. I think Luke Rockhold should be the next opponent of Jack Hermansson in the middleweight division. I just look at the middleweight division, I'm looking for an opponent for Luke Rockhold. It makes sense. And for Luke Rockhold, it makes sense. And for Jack Hermansson, he can get a big name guy, get him some momentum, and then after that, he can start talking about fighting Robert Whittaker, because I know Jack Hermansson called out Robert Whittaker, but with the most respect, Jack Hermansson, the Joker, shut the fuck up, you absolute cunt. Whittaker's getting his title shot. There's no fucking way he has to fight another person to get his title shot. That's final. Whittaker is getting his fucking title shot. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. I think they should do Jack Hermansson versus Luke Rockhold. And for Rockhold, he gets a name right back in the division, a guy who's coming off a win as well, a guy who's ranked in the top 10, a guy who's predominantly a grappler with maybe not the best stand-up, so it's actually a good style matchup for Luke Rockhold. And for Jack Hermansson, you get a guy who's had a long layoff, whose chin is maybe a little bit questionable, who's cutting down to middleweight for the first time in a while, and he has massive name value. That's an opportunity for Jack Hermansson to make his name, gain more momentum himself, and then start to look towards maybe the loser of Vettori versus Adesanya, or something like that to get him up those rankings again. But I think Hermansson needs one more win, and I think that guy should be Luke Rockhold, because no one else is really matching up time-wise with Jack Hermansson right now in the middleweight division. Luke Rockhold it is. Moving on to the guy who lost in the People's Co-Main event, Edmen Shahbazyan. Now, I know a lot of people felt bad for Garbrandt. I kind of really felt bad for Shahbazyan because he just got brushed under the rug, and I feel like he was crying in his hotel room because he lost exactly the same way he lost last time, by gassing out as the fight went on. Even with his year of trying to perfect that not happening, it still happened in this fight. So there's a problem there with Edmen Shahbazyan. I think his next opponent should not be a ranked opponent, but I found the perfect unranked opponent for him, a guy who just lost to a man named Sean Strickland. It is Krzysztof Jotko. Unranked, barely, just outside the rankings, older guy, took a bunch of damage against Sean Strickland. He's going to need a lot of time off as well. Edmen Shahbazyan took a lot of damage against Jack Hermansson. I want both of them out for at least 5 months after each of their fights. Let's make Edmen Shahbazyan versus Krzysztof Jotko. If he wins that one, he's back in the mix. He's still ranked. He's coming off a win. And I think he actually has a chance in beating Krzysztof Jotko because Jotko does slow down as the fight goes on. He's not the best guy on the feet. His chin's not the best in the world. He's an aging opponent. I think that's a good little... It's a good little respectable bounce back fight for Edmen Shahbazyan. It's not like I'm chucking him some random middleweight coming off a loss far down the rankings. I'm giving him someone who's known to be somewhat good, but still is like a good fight for Edmen Shahbazyan. I think that's the fight to make at middleweight. Shahbazyan versus Jotko. And that's about that, really. Feel so bad for Shahbazyan, but either way. Moving on to a fight that happened on the prelims. Joshua Kalibau got a good win over Yilan Shah. Another fight happened on the prelims as well at featherweight, which was Ricardo Ramos versus Bill Aljo. And Ramos, although didn't win the fight, got his hand raised for some weird reason. I think they just accidentally raised his hand other than Bill Aljo's. But now apparently he's got a win. So he's going to move on in the division. So I think they should do Joshua Kalibau versus Ricardo Ramos. Both guys had sort of not too damaging decision wins, where they're going to be around maybe 4 months from now, 5 months, probably about 4 months from now. I'd assume they want to get back in there. Both young guys in the division. They're both on the same schedule right now as well because they just fought on the same card. I think Joshua Kalibau versus Ricardo Ramos. Winner of that one gets a jump against someone outside the rankings at featherweight. Winner of that one, we'll see what happens down the line. Joshua Kalibau, Ricardo Ramos. Let's make that fight happen. Moving on to down the card, or up the card actually, back to the feature fight on the card for some bizarre reason. Jared Vandeera versus Justin Tafa took place in the feature fight. Jared Vandeera got a huge win. Really crazy fight back and forth, but Jared Vandeera showed that he actually belongs in the UFC. He had an amazing performance, had some really good kicks. I think his next opponent should be the Man Mountain himself, Jargis Danho, another underdog winner. This time it was against Jorgen De Castro. Jargis Danho got a brutal first round KO. I'd like to see Jared Vandeera versus Jargis Danho. Both guys not too good, but they're coming off wins, low down the rankings in the heavyweight division. The winner of this one can get maybe a decent name in like the top 25 area of the heavyweight division, but I think they both need one more win before they start looking for that jump up the rankings, and I think against each other is a perfect way to do it. Jared Vandeera, Jargis Danho, whatever his name is, the Man Mountain himself. Let's make that fight happen. Obviously give Vandeera a little bit of time off because he was bleeding all over the place. So let's give him a little bit of time and make that fight when we come back. Other than that, Ben Rothwell won a fight due to Chris Barnett entering cardiac arrest. Predicted that one, by the way. Big Ben, back in action, coming off a win in the heavyweight division. I think his next opponent should be, he's pretty highly ranked in the heavyweight division, is Ben Rothwell, so I think I'm going to put him against Alexander Romanov. Reason being, some people would say Romanov is maybe, he's 3-0 in the heavyweight division. Usually he'd get a jump up the rankings to a ranked opponent. I don't feel like he deserves that. You know what I'm saying? I think, like, they're not going to make the Juan Espino rematch. Fair play. They're not going to do that. It's not like a title fight or anything like that, so they don't like making immediate rematches usually. Ben Rothwell, Alexander Romanov. You can't jump Romanov into the rankings after losing the way, or winning the way he did, sorry. I accidentally said losing because he kind of over-exaggerated a groin shot, okay? And it was annoying, so let's give him another guy because we can't just jump him up now. That was a little bit unappealing the way he beat Juan Espino. But either way, Ben Rothwell showed really good grappling in his past few fights, especially the recent one against Chris Barnett, where he won the first round based on grappling and had some good grappling moments there, especially when he finished it by that random submission that doesn't exist. Either way, Ben Rothwell versus Alexander Romanov is the fight I want to see made next, and those are all the fights I need to see made after UFC Vegas 27. Thank you for tuning in. See you later. Click that button up there or wherever it is on the screen. Toodle pip.